Hi. This is my third newsletter of 2024. It's October 10th, so the third quarter ended the end of September. So I've just been, gathering some information, getting my life organized to bring this out for you. Today's newsletter is actually not going to be super long. There's quite a bit to read. I always say that, and then it ends up being 20 minutes of me talking to you. So if you're listening or watching, welcome. And if you'd rather read, that's awesome. Keep scrolling and you'll come to there. It's still just a 4-page newsletter. You can kind of breeze through it pretty quick. So I want to talk about the provincial election and 5 different pieces of real estate that are impacted and influenced by the provincial election. 5 kind of talking points, I guess, for the election and basically for our provincial government to speak to that are specific to real estate. I want to talk about that. And there's a little bit of local news we could definitely share. I'll give you a little bit of my prediction for the next quarter and maybe a little bit into 2025. Chat a little bit about a market update and some mortgage changes. And that's pretty much it. So we'll get started right away. I first just want to say, thank you again. If you're watching this, listening to this, then you are part of my community. And I deeply respect and appreciate your involvement, whether it's through social media, curiosity, engaging in conversation with me, suggesting my name to your family, hiring me yourself. This business of mine is built in a grassroots way. And what that means to me is you don't find my name on a park bench. I don't have big, centerfold magazine advertisements. That's just not it's not what has been feeling authentic and genuine for me right now. I've done those things in the past. I may do them again in the future. But right now, at this stage of my life and of my business, what feels most genuine and authentic to me is people finding me and reading Google reviews and really hearing what my clients have to say about me. That feels really genuine, as well as just truly word of mouth in our community. So thank you for helping me grow both of those things. I really appreciate it. Okay, so 5 concerns at a provincial level. BCREA is the British Columbia Real Estate Association. So as realtors in BC, we are all part of this association. They did an amazing job of speaking to each of these 5 pieces. I really appreciate their language and the awareness that they build and what you can find online through that association. So, and obviously I'm part of it, but I still really deeply appreciate it. So, number 1, tradespeople. There's a really big gap between the creation of new housing and the population growth that we're experiencing as a province, right? So new construction is happening all around us, but it's not happening at the same rate as new population is coming into our province. And that actually is going to get much worse as we see lots of the very skilled tradespeople that are currently still in the workforce approaching retirement in the next 10 years. So as a provincial government, what are we doing to ensure that more tradespeople are working through their apprenticeships, becoming more skilled, and then being offered good, sustainable employment in our province so that we can meet some of those needs? One of the numbers BCREA released was that they say 55,000 tradespeople are retiring in the next 10 years. And in order to meet the construction targets that we have as a province, which is the number of the construction targets is directly related to our population growth, right? We would need 130,000 new tradespeople working here in our province by 2035. That's only 10 years away. That's crazy. So I'm curious. That's one talking point with an election. I'm never going to talk about which party and that is so not my thing. I'm just bringing 5 conversations that are real estate related to the forefront while we are navigating a provincial election. That's all that's happening here. Number 2, what about a housing tax reform? So the taxation levels in BC are unreal. Some of the highest in the whole world, let alone our country. So if the BC government, whoever is in charge, right, if they want to actually support affordable housing, looking at our taxation is one of the ways that they could significantly improve affordability in our province. Get this, the BC government takes in $2 billion per year from property transfer tax. 2 billion. I knew the number was huge, but I had no idea it was 2 billion. And 2 billion is so much more than like 200 million. Like, oh my God, when you actually do the math, it's crazy. So then I got in the rabbit hole. Property transfer tax started in 1987 as a tax to prevent speculation. So to prevent people from, making lots of money by buying and selling houses quickly. And it was applicable to only 5% of the sales that were taking place in 1987. And then we have today. So property transfer tax, if you're not aware, it is charged on every single real property transaction. So condos, vacant land, houses in BC, unless it is your very first time buying real estate in BC and you meet all of the exemption requirements, including being a BC resident, including having never owned anywhere before, and including shopping within a certain price range. So $2 billion a year. Like, that's crazy. And when you just as an average, like if I was going to sell my house and buy another house for whatever reason, sure, I pay real estate fees, like commission fees on my sale if I engage with a realtor and hire a realtor. But on my purchase, I pay the province property transfer tax. It's not optional. It's probably about $12,000 given the price range I'd be shopping in. So that is a huge equity eater. That eats up a serious amount of equity that would otherwise be tax-free personal income selling my primary residence. So anyways, I have so many questions. It hasn't ever been reviewed. It's never on the table as a talking point. Something that happened kind of recently is they increased the threshold for first-time buyers of how much you can spend that first time and still receive a partial exemption. But I mean, that's just one of the taxes that we're talking about. So crazy. Hold on. Oh, there's also flipping tax, there's flipping tax. There's, sitting on a vacant house tax. There's all kinds of things that are, all kinds of different ways of taxing homeowners and property owners in our province. And we could really start to look at some of those. The $2 billion, like that, don't misunderstand me, that does not include our local municipal tax. It doesn't include any like development surcharges, anything like that. It's just property transfer tax. Crazy. So I want to talk about that. I want someone, I wish I was at the all candidates meeting. I screwed that up. I meant to be there and then I made other plans, but I'd like to hear those types of conversations flying around between our candidates. Third talking point is short-term rentals. So there is obviously right now a province-wide ban on short-term rentals. It has caused a lot of disruption in the tourism sectors for sure. And I would say specifically created issue for like travel nurses and medical employees that are traveling for work, for caregivers working in urban areas, apparently film workers. That's been really hard for the film industry. What about people that are building houses and there's a delay in construction? They need a real house, not a hotel room, to stay in for 6 weeks until they get the keys to their new house. Things like that. I have many clients who own properties that have a suite in them. So say they own an investment property, and part of that investment property, there's a little suite, and that little suite was always supposed to be for their parents who actually live in Europe, who come over for, 6 or 8 weeks a year. Their parents have helped them buy that investment property with the specific use and plan of coming to stay in it sometimes. And so why can't they rent it short term for the balance of the year when they're not here, right? If that's not the primary residence, they can't. So things like that. I understand the need for long-term rentals for sure. I'm not saying that there shouldn't be any rules around short-term rentals, but I think there need to be, people need to look more closely at our exemptions and be more realistic. Like a more broad lens is needed, in my opinion. Fourth talking point, this one's really, it just feels so easy and necessary. Why don't we have a permanent provincial housing roundtable where you can take, 8 or 10 representations from different organizations, sit them all at the table and have them make decisions about things like short-term rentals, changing the notice requirements for tenancies, things like that. And you could have a member sitting at the table from the Appraisal Institute of BC, from the Canadian Mortgage Brokers Association, the Realtors Association, Aboriginal Housing Management Association, all of those people sitting at the same table making decisions together would give a much broader lens of how to make decisions that can actually be permanent. So for example, what happened recently, they changed the notice period for tenants. So they said, oh, you don't have to give 2 months notice anymore. Now you have to give 4 months notice. Then very quickly, the province realized, oh my God, for everybody purchasing, if you're a buyer, purchasing a property that is tenanted, and you want to give them notice so that you can take possession of the house yourself. Previously, 2 months notice was allowed. Now we have to give 4 months notice. Well, that buyer, if they're having mortgage financing as part of their purchase arrangements, which 90% of people are, your mortgage approval doesn't last for the duration of the tenant's notice, which means you can't get a mortgage, you can't get commitment from a bank to lend you a mortgage for a long enough period of time to await the closing, because the tenant gets to stay for 4 whole months. So then they changed it to 3 months. But those types of mistakes are expensive and they're just a waste of time, and they are preventable if you have the right people sitting at one table making big decisions. So that is, I just can't believe we don't have that. How do we not have that? And then the fifth talking point is that, speaking of that notice period change, there are still some residual pieces of that need changing. For example, in order to give a tenant notice, you're supposed to upload a copy of the purchase contract to a web portal, and not all buyers want their personal information shared when they aren't the landlord and they aren't the tenant. They're a third party that has nothing to do with that relationship. And the tenant having access and information about who's buying it, it just becomes like a privacy issue. Another one, follow me here. What if a tenant is given 4 months notice? The buyer has 3 months now. I can hardly keep up. 3 months notice. The buyer has everything lined up to take possession 3 months later. And then in the meantime, the tenant finds new housing and they decide to leave 40 days into the 3-month period. The landlord then has to pay for the missing month's rent that they were counting on, because the buyer isn't lined up to close until the 3 months are up. Now there's this little gap, but it would be cool if they could just like pop it on Airbnb, but they're not allowed because it's not their primary residence. So there are all these discrepancies that are just like silly and unnecessary that need to be cleaned up, in my opinion. So those are the 5 talking points that BCREA has shed extra light on. And I agree that those are 5 things that we should be, they should be on the table whenever people are talking about affordable housing and real estate in this province. Those are 5 talking points that are really important to me. Local news, our city is mapping out a 5-year plan for our airport, and they're seeking community input. There is, in the newsletter, there's a draft plan that I've linked that you can have a look at and see like why it's important, what kind of things they're navigating and planning. It's really cool. It's the future of our community in a lot of ways. Also, I don't know if you noticed in August, there were a bunch of blue flags outside of City Hall. It was a really beautiful awareness project about overdoses, specifically with men. So there were 12,000 blue flags on the lawns of City Hall, which represents the amount of men and boys that have died from opioid drug overdoses since 2016 in our province, which is unbelievable. And it's also a topic that is like dear to my own family's heart in multiple ways. So I thought that was really beautiful that our city council took the time to make such a visual recognition of such a big, tender topic. Third thing I want to mention is, if I'm curious if you guys had any, if you attended any of the Campbell River Live Streets performances and events this summer. They were so fun, so family friendly, outside. I took my children and some friends and we went down to watch the last one, which was 5 Alarm Funk, and it was so much fun. And in those moments, I just feel like so proud of our community. I also feel deeply proud when I go to the pier and fish with all the retired men, usually, who are so passionate and so generous with their knowledge and have made lots of new friends. and learned so much about fishing this year, which has been really fun. Quick little market update. There are currently, as of yesterday when I wrote this, 150 single family homes currently listed for sale. Pre-COVID, our numbers were like 200, 220 in a pretty balanced market. And then when things were really lean and the market was crazy, like wild, fresh meat vibes, as soon as something would hit the hot sheet, there were 45 houses on the market. So we're just kind of in the middle. Our inventory is really quite good at 150. Things move quickly. Nothing's sitting on the market too long in most cases, but we're not like flooded with inventory, which is great. There are 85 strata properties for sale. That includes condos, townhouses. Now, of those two numbers, lots of those properties already have accepted offers in place, but until those offers are unconditional, they will show as active listings. The market is pretty steady this time of year. I always talk about the fall market. Spring is the time that everybody thinks is like the most important, busiest time, but fall is a very good opportunity too. The market it's like a mini spring market from the third week of September until the end of November. And last year was exceptionally slow this time of year, but people were really sitting on their hands, feeling a lot of uncertainty about the market at large. This year is a totally different vibe. People are there's just more energy, different vibe altogether. Not that there's like urgency and stress and there's no like frenetic energy, but it's just more stable, more confident, more reasonable. It's good. It's really fun out there right now. What else did I wanted to say? Oh yeah, my predictions. So interest rates started coming down this year in June, which was kind of sooner than I thought. The rates went up to curb inflation, and the inflation numbers have done what the economists wanted them to do. So then the interest rates have been coming back down. They've come down 0.75% since June, which might not seem like much, but it actually does impact affordability. And also it really impacts buyer confidence big time. So once people see the rates coming down, we start to realize like, oh, I think we've hit the floor in pricing. And I do think we've hit the floor in pricing, actually. I don't think prices are coming down past this. The rates are coming down, the volume's coming up. So we will start to see like the interest rates and then the sales volume and the like housing costs, they really travel in tandem. So when the rates go down, the prices go up and the volume goes up and vice versa. So I think it sounds like the predictions for 2025 interest rates is that they will come down 0.5 to 1.5% over 2025 as a year, which tells me that the market's going to heat back up next year from what I can see. I think we've already hit the floor. I think that's it. No. Mortgage changes. Just kidding. There's a few things I wanted to talk to. I am not a mortgage broker, but I work closely with a few brokers who I love and I respect and I trust, and I ask them questions all of the time. So anytime you have questions about these things, I would just send you to them. But I do try to stay informed and educated so that I can speak to these topics like in a more general way. There have been a few changes to the industry. So we are now allowed 90% ratio for refinancing. So if you're like, what does that even mean? If you have a house that's worth $1 million and you only owe, $500,000 on it, and you want to build a suite in your backyard, you can finance a second mortgage up to $900,000, up to 90% of the value of your property. So that there's basically that rule change allows more equity to be used in a refinance. That's what I'll say. There's a little more to it, but I'll keep it short. Again, not a mortgage broker. Second change, we are now seeing 30-year amortizations are more accessible. I'm actually pretty sure they're giving 30-year amortizations on insured mortgages. An insured mortgage means that your down payment was less than 20% when you purchased the house. And this is, I don't want to bore you. You probably might know this, but if you have a mortgage that's financed in such a way with less than a 20% down payment, the bank says, that's too scary, I don't want to take that risk. And then CMHC, right? They basically insure your mortgage. So if you were to default and not pay for your mortgage, the bank wouldn't have to chase you. They would just be able to use the insurance, which is CMHC, to secure the money that they lent you to buy the house. So I'm pretty sure now we're allowed to have 30-year amortizations on properties that have been insured, which means they've had a down payment of less than 20%. If you're a mortgage broker and I screwed that up, teach me. I'm humble. I'm not proud enough to think that I know everything. I don't. Third change, they're allowing insured mortgages to purchase. They're allowed insured mortgages of up to 1.5 million, which previously you were only allowed an insured mortgage up to 1 million. So the same CMHC insurance that I just explained has seen another change where now you're allowed to spend 1.5 and still have a down payment of less than 20%. Now, where we live, you might hear that and think like, that's ridiculous. No one should spend that much. But there are other places in our province where the average price is above 1.5. So in other communities, that's a really big change, a really needed change. It might get someone from a townhouse into a single family home where they can have a suite and a mortgage helper, right? Fourth change, there's no stress test for refinancing. So what was happening before is not when you buy a house, but say you own a house and your 5-year mortgage term is up. If you wanted to go shop around, you're like, you know what, TD, this rate that you're showing me isn't as good as what I can get at Scotiabank. I want to talk to Scotiabank. Scotiabank could look at refinancing your current home that you've lived in for 20 years, but they would have to put you through this stress test process, which might mean that you weren't able to get approved for your own house that you already have a mortgage on, because that's how mortgage law has been for a little while, which is all done to protect us from overborrowing. I'm not sad about the stress test, but it's cool that now you don't need to stress test when you are refinancing and staying in your normal house. So this allows people who are refinancing their houses to have access to all rates and all mortgage products instead of being kind of stuck with their current provider on a renewal-only basis. The doors are more open, so they can actually get the mortgage products that they need, which is really cool. Sure enough, took 22 minutes. I said it would be short, but I lied. And that's all. I'm going to send this off to your inboxes. If you're seeing this, that means you already received it. And if you have any questions or comments or you want to chat about any of these topics, I will take you for coffee and it will be wonderful. I hope you have a great day.